On the outside, the surface of this lake looks like the aftermath of a disaster. Empty tree trunks spike out of the turquoise waters. The lake is surrounded by mountains, making it a quiet but unsettling place. But those who dare to swim under these dangerous waters will soon discover a whole new world. This isn't the beginning of a fairy tale, it's the actual story of Kayindi Lake, located in Sati, Kazakhstan. Back in 1911, an earthquake caused a major landslide in this location. The valley created eventually filled up with rainwater, practically submerging the forest. The trees that are located above the waters might look very sad, but beneath the surface, they remind you of an underwater forest. Since the waters are crystal clear most of the time, you can still see this fascinating view even from its shores. The ice-cold water makes this lake so tricky and, at times, even dangerous. And don't forget about all the algae, plants, and submerged trees that can rapidly become risky obstacles. Hey, I enjoy a steamy hot bath, but this boiling lake I'll tell you about now is really the stuff of scary dreams. It's located on the Caribbean island of Dominica, and its waters have temperatures between 180 and 197 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just around the edges, since no one has ever dared to reach the middle of the lake to measure its core temperature. It's true that the heat can go down from time to time, but you never know when these waters may start to boil again. The place is also dangerous because of the gases it releases, such as carbon dioxide. It doesn't smell nice, trust me, but that's mostly because of the sulfur stuck in the steamy air. This seemingly calm lake also carries a dangerous surprise. Lake Manan, located in West Province, Cameroon. It's one of the few erupting lakes on the whole planet, similar to a volcano, and most of the time it does so without any warnings. Its last eruption dates back to 1894, when it caused serious damage. The chemical mechanism of such lakes works like a can of soda that you shake before opening. There are risky gases on the bottom of the waters, so any disturbance on the surface may trigger their eruption. Natron Lake in Tanzania may be beautiful to watch because of its unique reddish coloring, but it's definitely not a place you'd want to take a swim in. While the water is extremely salty, it also combines with algae, which, by the way, are responsible for the coloring. And that's not even the riskiest thing about it. Natron Lake has pH levels so high that they become corrosive. If you dampen a piece of dyed material in this lake, it'll soon be stripped of its color. These high levels of acidity can also cause serious problems to the human skin. It's not all bad for some creatures, as Lake Natron is the only home to over 2.5 million small flamingos. These acidic and brackish waters support their survival, so it's no wonder they like to stick around. Lake Nicaragua's danger factor has less to do with chemistry and more to do with its inhabitants. It's located on the border of Costa Rica and Nicaragua and is the largest freshwater lake in Central America. When you first look at it, you won't think it can be dangerous, but because of the bull sharks inhabiting it, I wouldn't recommend taking a swim. Sharks tend to be unpredictable and at times intimidating creatures. Plus, they will eat everything if needed. Scientists initially believed this species of shark was only found in this lake, but they soon discovered that people had seen the same sharks in the Caribbean Sea. These astonishing creatures not only cross a distance of over 120 miles to get here, but can also adapt to freshwater, something not all fish can do. Belize's Great Blue Hole may seem alluring to divers. I mean, it has a gorgeous deep blue color and is pretty close to the mainland, about 62 miles. The problem is that beneath the surface of these tranquil waters is a mixed-up series of tunnels which contain many types of coral and other wildlife. These caves are what makes diving through the Great Blue Hole tricky. More so, specialists discovered that deeper into the waters there are fewer and fewer creatures. Why? Because of a hidden layer of hydrogen sulfide that spans over the whole width of the sinkhole. Since there's no oxygen, no creature can ever survive this deep into the hole. Lake Lanier is the largest lake in the state of Georgia. It has a lot of visitors each year, about 11 million, so that's about the same number as visiting the Louvre Museum in Paris. Despite its popularity, a lot of accidents happen on this lake, and nobody knows for sure why. One of the explanations may lie beneath the surface of this mysterious lake. There's a lot of debris and rubble in there, along with random objects that have been tossed in, like boats, lawn chairs, and even fishing wire. All this creates a tricky underwater obstacle course. With the added low visibility on the surface of the lake, this place can become risky to navigate. Another one of those lakes that looks like someone might have overdone with editing is the Grand Prismatic Spring, located in Yellowstone National Park, which stretches into the states of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Swimming here is completely prohibited. Why? It's 189 degrees Fahrenheit in the center, almost close to boiling temperatures, and the outermost ring reaches around 131, hence the colors. Since the center of the water is way too hot for any life to make it, there's nothing clouding the surface. The lack of any living organisms here creates that vivid blue that looks almost painted over. On the small Mediterranean island of Cyprus, there's not a lot of rain during the summer. That's why some bodies of water here become so dry that in certain areas they get covered in a layer of baked salt. It's the case for the Larnaca Salt Lake. Now don't be fooled by the eerie landscape. These lands can easily become a trap. That's because it's easy to get confused about what's actually a dry surface and what's just a thin layer of salt on top of water or mud. More so, underneath the crust are salt crystals, which can cause problems for people's skin. Samisan Hole is one of the most dangerous places to swim in the whole of Thailand. It's because it's very deep, reaching 280 feet, and gets extremely dark. At certain points, as divers get lower, they can even reach places with zero visibility. No wonder a lot of people get confused and can't seem to find their way up anymore. The largest lake in Africa and the third largest lake in the entire world is called Lake Victoria. Not all of its waters are unsafe for people, but some regions can rapidly cause problems. Why? Particularly because it has its own isolated weather system, and that makes the weather really unreliable. It can go from bright and sunny to terrible in a matter of seconds. I mean, who would want to get caught swimming in the middle of a storm, right? Pustoye Lake is located in Siberia, so I'm guessing I don't need to tell you the waters here get extremely cold. But if you look at the lake, there's nothing out of the ordinary with these waters. Is that completely true? Most likely not, and people tend to avoid swimming here at all costs, even if they can resist the freezing cold waters. So, what makes Lake Pustoye so mysterious and dangerous? Well, nothing seems to want to live here, and scientists have yet to discover why. They tried to fill the lake with many types of fish and various plant species to see if they could survive in the waters, but the results were disappointing. Since we don't know exactly what makes it so difficult to survive here, don't go running for your swimming trunks just yet. It's best if you stay away. Hey, you don't have to tell me twice.
Let's check out one interesting town surrounded by mountains and woods in upstate New York. This place sits right on a big lake, and the city is called Lake George. People like to come here to go fishing, boating, and take up other water activities. You can meet many fishers, athletes, and a screaming man standing by the shore. Lake George is one of the most popular places in the northern part. Wait a minute, what? A screaming man? What does it mean? Yeah, people come to the shore, look towards the lake and the mountains, and just scream loudly. It looks pretty weird from the outside. Here's a young guy screaming, then he leaves, and a girl stands in his place. She starts screaming too, and then she offers you to do the same. Okay, you come to the spot where she was standing, turn towards the water, and shout. Wow! The sound of your voice echoes back to you. You hear yourself as if the sound wave passed through a giant megaphone. Your scream sounds distorted. It's unbelievable. You get closer to the shore and start screaming again. But this time, the magic is gone. You hear your usual scream. You return to that point, and here's the sound of your cry rising to you again with an echo. But how does this happen? Look where you're standing, the girl tells you. You're standing on a round concrete platform with an engraved image of a compass. Right on the compass, you see a blue map of the lake. In the center of this pattern, two compass lines intersect and form the X symbol. Anyone who stays in this exact spot and shouts towards the lake will hear an incredible echo of their voice. It's as if your scream is coming back to you from another dimension. But the most exciting thing is that people standing nearby don't hear it. They see you as just a screaming person with an ordinary voice. They can hear the echo only in this X spot. Scientists still can't explain this acoustic phenomenon or figure out the reason for this behavior of the sound waves. All they have is guesses and theories. The concrete platform is surrounded by a small curved wall from the lakeside. Some people think that your voice resonates from this wall and creates this sound effect. Many places have similar semicircular walls, but they can't play such an acoustics trick. Another theory says that mountains and water somehow create the echo effect. There's also an old legend according to which a magical creature appeared at this spot. It shouted towards the water, and its wisdom has echoed throughout the lake ever since. I still think the sound resonates from the wall, but let's move on. We have more places to go. The next incredible location we're going to drop by is in California. Welcome to Lake Berryessa. Just stand on the shore and watch. Everything seems normal, beautiful nature, clean, calm water, but there's a huge deep hole in this lake into which millions of cubic feet of water are pouring per second. But don't worry, this is not a natural anomaly or a tunnel to the underworld. It's the glory hole, and people created it. Lake Berryessa is in the area where the farming town of Monticello used to stand. In the last century, people built a dam next to the lake. During the rains, the water level rose and overflowed beyond the edges of the dam. To solve this problem, engineers built a vast hole. To give you an idea of how vast it is, imagine an ant standing on the edge of your bathtub with water flowing through the drain hole. The glory hole is as big for you as the drain hole would be for the ant. The water goes through a long horizontal tunnel and enters the nearest bay. The glory hole is a local attraction and a popular place for tourists. Now let's move to the Caribbean region for another fascinating location. Here, among the clear blue sea, you can find a unique lake on one of the dreamlike islands. Its entire territory looks like a giant concrete platform. But don't swim in it. Steam emanates from the lake's surface because of high temperatures. Almost all the water here is liquid asphalt. Pitch Lake is the largest asphalt deposit in the world. Its depth is 250 feet, which means that a passenger Boeing can fit there in an upright position. Scientists haven't yet studied the lake thoroughly. They think there's a fault in the Earth's crust underneath it. Natural gases and oil pass through this crack and mix with water. Then, all this liquid goes through many chemical reactions and turns into asphalt. The lake contains about 10 million tons of hot material, according to rough estimates. Theoretically, no life can exist in such conditions, but scientists discovered a colony of microbes there. This means that life outside of our planet can exist. Saturn's largest moon, Titan, has many hydrocarbon lakes on its surface, similar to Pitch Lake. And if the simplest forms of life can exist here, in the asphalt lake, they may also survive on Titan. Our next unusual lake is in a pretty unexpected place, in the driest region on Earth. And these are not hot dunes and lifeless plains. This region is in Antarctica. A dry area is not where it's hot, but where there's almost no precipitation. The desert is not heat and sand, but the absence of life. Some areas of Antarctica meet these two criteria. It's so cold here that a mug of tea can freeze in a minute. But the lake we want to see doesn't freeze. Although it's not even a lake, but a pond, because of its tiny size and depth of several inches. It resembles a large puddle of icy water. It doesn't freeze because Don Juan Pond is one of the saltiest reservoirs on the planet. Salt prevents water from turning into ice. But the most interesting thing is the lake's origin. Scientists still don't know how it appeared here. Our next stop is in the southern part of Tunisia. In 2014, a strange lake appeared out of nowhere, right in the middle of the desert. No one knows when the lake was born, since this part of the region is sparsely populated and people don't live in the area around the lake. Shepherds passing by were the first to have noticed the lake. They told the locals about it. A few hours later, hundreds of people came to the place to swim in the clear, cool water. The lake became a popular place, but after a few days, something strange happened. The water turned dark green. The locals didn't care about this and continued to bathe in the lake. But when scientists and geologists arrived at the place, they immediately declared that the water was dangerous. They said the lake was stagnating. It didn't refresh itself from underground streams, and the rains didn't feed it either. The water became moldy and dirty, and then turned green. The lake contained algae and a lot of harmful bacteria dangerous to the human body. Scientists also found out that the land in this region had phosphate deposits. This substance can decay and become radioactive. But the locals didn't take the scientists' words seriously. Just imagine that you're wandering in the desert under the scorching sun and notice a cool green lake. Few people will refuse to jump in there. The origin of this lake remains a mystery. Some experts think that heavy rains have filled a hole in the ground with water. Water has probably accumulated in the shadow of rocks surrounding the canyon. But another, more frightening theory says that an earthquake formed the lake. The seismic activity must have torn the Earth's crust above the water table. Then, underground springs spilled out of the depths and filled this crevice. This means that all the water that came here can pour back out. Imagine pulling the plug out of the drain hole in a bathtub. Any small earthquake can make the lake's plug fly out. In this case, the gap can take all the water back underground. So let's hope there won't be any swimmers in the lake at that moment.
The tranquil-looking Lake Manaun in Cameroon is one real trickster. At first, it may seem calm and peaceful, but this lake is like a fiery volcano waiting to erupt at any moment. And it doesn't even have the decency to give any warning signs. Its last outburst was way back in 1984, which caused a bang that left everyone in awe. It's like the lake's got a soda can mechanism down there. Or, in technical terms, it experiences a limnic eruption. This rare phenomenon happens when gas from deep under the water suddenly erupts. Certain things have to happen prior for it to occur, though. There are some things you can look out for if you feel worried. For starters, if the vegetation around a lake looks a bit flattened, it might have previously experienced a limnic eruption. That's because the water can pop up with a lot of pressure and overflow. The water being a bit warmer all of a sudden can also mean you need to head to safety. There's this lake in Kazakhstan that looks like a total disaster on the surface, with empty tree trunks sticking out of the water. Not cute. But if you're feeling daring and want to take a swim, you'll be transported to a whole new world. Its story goes back to the year 1911, when there was a landslide that filled the valley with rainwater, completely submerging a local forest. As mesmerizing as it might sound, it's no easy task to dive in. The water is freezing, and all the algae, plants, and submerged trees make it a risky obstacle course. Have you heard about this scorching lake on the sunny Caribbean island of Dominica? The water around the edges is at a sweltering 180 to 197 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder no one has the guts to measure the middle. It's that hot. Sure, the heat may go down once in a while, but who knows when those waters will start boiling again? Plus, this place is full of nasty gases like carbon dioxide. Because of them, let's just say it doesn't exactly smell like roses. More like rotten eggs. So unless you want to end up looking like a boiled lobster, I suggest you stay away from these waters. If you're planning a trip to Tanzania, you might want to think twice before diving into Natron Lake. Sure, it's got a beautiful reddish hue, but that's thanks to some bacteria that call this lake home. And don't even get me started on the pH levels. They're so high they might even strip the color off your swimsuit. But hey, at least the flamingos like it there. Those acid-loving birds are living their best lives in a group with 2.5 million of their closest feathered friends. How come these birds manage to thrive there, you might wonder? Well, no predators means no stress, which equals easy breeding. They also love feasting on that fancy bacteria which makes the water all pink. You may think that Belize's Great Blue Hole is just calling out to you with its stunning blue hues and close proximity to land. But hold your flippers, because there's a catch. Sure, it's about 900 feet across and 300 feet deep, but lurking beneath the surface is a confusing patterns of tunnels filled with coral and wildlife. It's like finding your way through a maze at a theme park, but with more fish. And as if that wasn't tricky enough, the deeper you go, the fewer creatures you'll encounter. Why, you ask? Well, it turns out that there's a sneaky layer of hydrogen sulfide that covers the entire width of the hole, depriving any living creature of oxygen. Plan on heading to the Devil's Kettle waterfall in Minnesota? This one won't necessarily be dangerous for you, but you might end up losing some of your stuff out there if you don't pay attention. That's because this waterfall experiences a phenomenon that's a real head-scratcher for geologists. One part of the waterfall flows normally, while the other part disappears into a big ol' hole. And get this, not even ping pong balls can make it out. Scientists decided to investigate, and they went all out, even using GPS trackers. Initially, they couldn't figure it out until they realized that the hole acts like a giant blender. That water is getting spun around so hard, it's basically obliterating everything in its path. They finally measured the water volume and saw that it was still there, so it was supposed to come back out somewhere. The most likely explanation is that the water is probably re-emerging in the stream located beneath the waterfall. You've surely heard of the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, that's old news. But let me tell you about the Pacific's very own watery trap called the Devil's Sea. It's like a game of hide and seek, but with ships. They disappear and we can never find them again. The Kayo Maru No. 5 was on a mission to investigate a volcanic island, but the trip ended up being just one way. Add a dash of detective work to the subject and you'll find out the whole story about the Devil's Sea is more myth and less fact. But it doesn't make it any less interesting. If you're still interested in some mysterious ship disappearance, then Lake Superior is the place you'll want to read about. Even the most skilled scuba divers can't find a single piece of all those lost vessels. The main character of this lake story was a ship called the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, the biggest one to sink in the Great Lakes. To this day, people aren't sure why it sank. So, you're planning a little swim in one of the Great Lakes, huh? Well, might want to steer clear of Lake Michigan, unless you're really into extreme water sports. This bad boy has a reputation for being the most dangerous of the bunch, thanks to some sneaky undercurrents that like to snatch unsuspecting swimmers. Make sure to watch out for those pesky piers and docks that only add to the lake's swimming difficulty. If you're feeling adventurous, you might want to skip the months of October or November. This is when the temperatures start to drop and the currents get extra wild. Tibet has its dangerous lake too, and at first glance, it's gorgeous. But don't get too excited. It's got a salt content so high that nothing can survive in it. Some villagers around there actually consider it to be tainted with some sort of substance. The cherry on top? Other locals believe there's a selfish creature living in the lake who's hogging up all the space for itself. No wonder its nickname is Darkness. No list of dangerous waters is complete without Lake Victoria, the big kahuna of African lakes and the third biggest in the whole wide world. But beware. Not all its waters are safe for us humans. Some regions can be real troublemakers because this lake has its own personal climate. And what does that mean? Mostly that you can't trust the weather here one bit. You could be soaking up some sweet rays one second, and the next you're running from a torrential downpour. Unless you want to be caught swimming in a storm, steer clear of this moody lake. You might have already seen pictures of Lake Hillier. It's like a giant pool of grapefruit juice in Australia. Scientists have been scratching their heads over it for centuries because they still can't figure out with certainty why it's pink. But here's the kicker, it's not the only one. Yep, there's another pink lake out there called Lake Retba. Both of these lakes have super high salt content, which is apparently a magnet for some fancy microorganisms. These little guys produce beta-carotene, you know, the substance that's in carrots. And that's what gives these lakes their groovy colors. Interested in swimming in this lake? It's not technically dangerous because the water has such high amounts of salt in it. There are no scary sea creatures to worry about. But, on the other hand, you'll need to make sure you don't accidentally take a sip. Drinking highly salted water will make you dehydrate faster than a plant in the desert.
There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly change their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle fresh water or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness Monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing. Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example, it's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lake bed. They also kinda resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though. Glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake, Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish, small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lake bed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these, where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances. Boats and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people notice there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the Earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide?
Do you know what one of the most dangerous and scary lakes in the U.S. looks like? Let's check it out. This large lake is filled with blue water reflecting the sun's rays. Lush thickets of oaks and other trees surround this picturesque place. More than 150 small islands, which are the tops of hills, stick out from under the surface. People come here to swim and play frisbee, go boating, and sit quietly on the sand. Nothing dangerous, right? But if you dive underwater with scuba gear and start exploring the seabed, you'll see that it hides old fishing nets, broken sunken boats, debris of houses, and even graves. If you go to the local library and start researching the history of this place, you'll find out that many people were kicked out of the area against their will. You'll learn that there were terrible conflicts between locals here. You'll understand that the idyllic picture hides a terrible drama and hundreds of tragic fates. This is Lake Sidney Lanier, which is in North Georgia. It was named after writer Sidney Lanier, who created the poem Song of the Chattahoochee, dedicated to the river that feeds the lake. Despite the beautiful view, this isn't a natural body of water. Sidney Lanier is an artificial lake created in 1956 to fight floods caused by the river, to provide people with drinking water and hydroelectric power. The perfect place for creepy stories that often happen in small American towns. Before people created the lake, about 700 families inhabited this place. They made up a classic quiet village with farms, houses, churches, mills, and a cemetery. But when the state decided to create a lake here, the authorities forced people to leave their homes. Locals had lived here with their families for generations, and then they had to go away. Most of the buildings were moved, but the cemetery was left untouched. The graves are still there at the bottom, while people on the surface are swimming and having fun. 200 years before the lake appeared, the Cherokee tribe had lived in this place. In the 1830s, they also got kicked out of their territory. Then, in the first half of the 20th century, there was a very big conflict between locals. The reasons for the conflicts are quite scary, so we won't dwell on them. But it's important to note that more than 1,000 people got hurt by this conflict and were forced to leave their homes. So, we have a place where tragic episodes have happened 3 times, and where a lot of people have been injured throughout history. Of course, there's no scientific evidence that those events had any effect on the lake. But if we talk about spiritual, karmic plane, then see for yourself. Lake Lanier is considered one of the most dangerous lakes in history. 500 people have drowned or disappeared here since 1956, and almost 200 since 1994. About 11 million tourists visit the shores of the lake every year. About as many people visit the Louvre Museum in Paris. But don't think that accidents happen here because there are too many people there. A few dozen miles to the west, there's another popular lake, Altoona, and the same number of tourists come there every year. But there are almost 3 times fewer accidents there. For some reason, people drown at Lake Lanier, and motorboats often collide. There are no seasons with more or fewer accidents. So the cause of these tragedies may be hidden underwater. Many sunken boats, fishing nets, flooded villages, and graves lie at the bottom. Perhaps when someone dives here, they get tangled in nets, or stuck among debris or bump into rocks. Motorboats may not notice tourists passing by on air mattresses and crash into them. The water in the lake isn't very transparent, which makes it difficult to search for the missing. And then, there's also the legend that spirits inhabit this lake. Locals talk about phantoms who come out of the graves and try to pull the living under the water. Others tell stories about 27 ghosts of those who drowned in the lake over the years, but whose bodies haven't been found. But the scariest legend is probably the one about the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, 2 friends, Delamay Parker Young and Susie Roberts, got into their car. They drove to the gas station, refueled the car, didn't pay for the gas, and went to the lake. The evening started fun, but it turned into a terrible night. The girls drove off the bridge when they were crossing the lake, and disappeared. For an entire year, no one knew what had happened to them, but people thought that the lake had taken them. One day, a local fisherman went to the lake to catch some fish and suddenly noticed a body in a blue dress floating near the bridge. It was poorly preserved, so the examination couldn't determine the identity of the person. But many locals were sure that the body belonged to Parker Young. Some people saw that day that she borrowed this dress from Roberts and put it on. But where was the other girl? And why was there no car? A few decades later, in 1990, authorities discovered an old Ford sedan at the bottom of the lake. They extracted the car and found the body of Susie Roberts inside. After this tragedy, locals started telling scary stories about how a transparent Parker Young in a blue dress grabs passers-by by their clothes and tries to drag them into the water. So, what do we have now? 3 terrible events have occurred at this lake over the last 200 years, affecting thousands of people. There's an old cemetery at the bottom of the lake, which the authorities decided not to move. 2 girls drowned there. At first glance, these events are not related to modern accidents. But honestly, we all feel and understand this connection inside. Places with such heavy energy and such a past may influence the present. Some skeptics will argue with this, but let's be honest, hardly anyone will buy a house when something terrible and tragic has happened. Today, Lake Lanier is more popular than ever. Millions of tourists, beautiful views, and picnics. Nothing suspicious, but you should still be careful. Just open the internet and read about the accidents happening there. Those missing people didn't expect their vacations to turn into a tragedy, so be very vigilant if you decide to come there. Now let's finish our video with something mysterious but more upbeat. How about the Vanishing Lake in Northern Ireland? You come there, swim, take cool pics, and decide to come back for a picnic with your friends. You come the next day with your homies, but hey, there's no lake. It's gone. Your friends are so angry. They come all their way there because of a silly prank. You feel like you're going crazy. Well, calm down. You're fine. There was a lake. In fact, it's still there. It just has a curious geological quirk. 3 streams fill this lake, but none of them can flow out. The lake fills up quickly, and then, when it reaches a certain point, it just flushes away, like the water in a toilet bowl. There are gaps at the bottom of the lake that are clogged with peat and debris. They act like bath plugs. But when there's too much water, these plugs fly out and the lake goes underground. So relax and come here another day when it's filling again. The road that leads to the lake is slightly raised off the ground so that people can walk along it. Previously, this road went underwater and reappeared. And don't be surprised if one night you see an old horse-drawn carriage on this road. It does look scary and creepy. Legend says that more than 100 years ago, a carriage with horses was crossing this lake when the water level was high. The carriage sank, and locals have been telling scary tales about the phantom ever since. Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, 2 sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same 2 flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena-Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpina Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. There are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo-Petri. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo-Petri is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo-Petri itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo-Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo-Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yonaguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yonaguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience. Hey, you've heard of Stonehenge? Of course you have. Big rocks mysteriously mounted in circles on a plain in England by, somebody. But what if England's Stonehenge is only a replica of another monument, and its builders just crossed the Atlantic and copied what someone had already done elsewhere? Well, it turns out researchers found another Stonehenge underneath the waters of Lake Michigan. This lake is a hotspot for woo-woo unexplained things. A bunch of disappearances, plane crashes, and now this, an ancient underwater monument that looks strangely enough like Stonehenge. We couldn't help ourselves and needed to dive deep into the story. A ring of massive stones, arranged in a way that felt all too familiar. They saw 2 circles, an outer one and an inner one, sitting 40 feet below the surface. But this wasn't just a random pile of rocks. These stones had been placed there, purposefully, by human hands. And by doing some further research, they discovered that they were staring at a structure that's over 9,000 years old. Think about it. This Stonehenge beneath Lake Michigan predates the pyramids. It predates Stonehenge itself by about 4,000 years. All of this information was enough to startle scientists at Northwestern Michigan University. But that was before they found this out. One of the stones had a carving, a faint but clear petroglyph of a mastodon. Mastodons kind of look like the ancestors to our modern-day elephants, but they have been extinct on planet Earth since 10,000 years ago. So, whoever built this underwater Stonehenge needed to be alive at the same time these creatures roamed our planet. This discovery raised many questions among scientists. I mean, why on earth would they go through all this trouble to lay rocks at the bottom of a lake? Well, first things first. Scientists believe that Lake Michigan had much less water back then than it does now. Second, it could have something to do with ancestral practices of First Nation people. There's one theory from a professor of the University of Michigan. He suggested that the stones formed a kind of prehistoric hunting trap. He believes that early hunters used the circular formation as a drive lane to herd large animals like the mastodons from the rock carvings we were just talking about. Once they got these huge animals into a tighter circle, they could be more easily hunted. But not everyone's convinced by this theory. Some believe the circle probably had a deeper spiritual purpose. According to local Native American tribes, like the Anishinaabe, stones are more than just rocks. They're living beings. They hold spiritual energy and represent a connection to the earth and all living creatures. An elder from the Anishinaabe community even suggested that these stones are sacred, placed there by their ancestors to honor the land and its creatures. Scientists are trying to study the stone formation in depth, like about 40 feet. But that's the problem, actually. The fact that it's underwater makes it super difficult, since they don't have the best technology. Traditional archaeological tools don't work as well when everything is submerged, but promising new technologies like stereophotogrammetry, which literally means making 3D models of a site, are helping scientists study the stone circle more closely. Still, research is slow and expensive, so it's hard to know when this mystery will come to a close. As we said, Lake Michigan is a hot spot for unexplained phenomena. Its lakebed is filled with shipwrecks, such as the Thomas Hume, a sturdy American schooner. It also collects debris from airplanes that have suddenly gone missing while flying the area, such as Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 that disappeared in the 1950s. Some people even call the area the Lake Michigan Triangle, suggesting paranormal activities like what happens in the Bermuda Triangle might be going on. The lake spans over 22,000 square miles, which means it's almost two-thirds the size of the country of Ireland. In 2024, scientists were able to access another one of Lake Michigan's mysteries, the wreck of the Margaret A. Muir schooner. This 130-foot-long sailing ship sank over 130 years ago. The discovery was announced just recently by the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeological Association, the WUAA, whose team found the shipwreck sitting 50 feet below the surface just off the shores of Algoma, Wisconsin. Built in 1872, the Margaret A. Muir was a three-masted schooner built to carry heavy cargo across the Great Lakes. Her final voyage started out as a routine trip. Loaded with bulk salt, the ship left Bay City, Michigan, heading for South Chicago, Illinois. But on September 30th, 1893, things took a bad turn. Just as the Muir approached the town of Annapolis, now known as Algoma, a sudden storm hit. The ship began taking on water fast. The captain of the boat ordered his crew to abandon ship, and thankfully, they all made it to shore safely. For more than a century, the wreck sat undisturbed on the lakebed, its location a mystery. But thanks to a combination of historical research and high-resolution sonar, WUAA searchers finally found her in May of last year. The wreck is remarkably well preserved, with parts of the deck and gear still visible. Well, just a few lakes over to the left, researchers uncovered another impressive thing. At the bottom of Lake Mendota, near Madison, Wisconsin, researchers found 11 ancient canoes. They believe the oldest of the canoes dates all the way back to 2500 BCE. Now, if you don't get why that's important, it's because you're thinking with today's head. If in a classic Midwest highway you see a bunch of pickups, then back in the ancient days you see only canoes. They were the main mode of transportation for indigenous cultures. They were used to fish in deep waters, trade goods, and travel long distances. The reason why scientists were so excited with this discovery is because they had never found any proof of what canoes were being used for in this region back then. And to understand the local cultures that inhabited the area during this time period, they needed to have some information on that. This exciting discovery was announced by the Wisconsin Historical Society in May 2024. The first canoe, which they believe is around 1,200 years old, was pulled from the lake in 2021. Then a second one was dug up in 2022. And now divers have found at least 11 more canoes along what would have been an ancient shoreline, long since submerged. One theory is that these canoes were intentionally sunk to keep them from freezing or warping in winter. It's possible people stored them in the same spot for generations. Or maybe this is just a small part of a much bigger settlement. Historians do believe there could be an ancient village hidden under the water of the lake. Divers have already found stone tools, like net sinkers used for fishing, but the village itself hasn't been located yet. Truth is, while the Great Lakes often steal all the thunder, scientists point out that smaller lakes like Mendota have stories too. The Wisconsin Historical Society is working closely with Native nations to piece together more about the lake's history. You'll need to believe me when I say there is a third Stonehenge, all the way under the waters of Lake Constance, Switzerland. I mean, think of it like Stonehenge's cousin. Archaeologists began to discover this back in 2015, when they found a line of 170 man-made stone cairns under the lake. Scientists say this was most likely the work of several villages, and that the cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose because, well, the formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide, and they can build up to 6 feet. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. So around the time the original Stonehenge was being built. Some of the facts that link them together are their construction dates, as well as the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circular format. Scientists don't know much about this site yet, but hey, I see a pattern manifested all over the world. Don't you?